When you hear the word animation, you'd probably think of Disney or DreamWorks or Pixar. But just because Disney created one of the earliest animations, it doesn't mean that it was the first. To actually determine what the first animation is, we need to ask ourselves, what is animation? The word-for-word definition of animation, in the context that we're using, is the technique of photographing successive drawings or positions of puppets or models to create an illusion of movement when the movie is shown as a sequence. To put it simply, if it's not a real thing and it looks like it's moving, it could be classified as animation. Movement can be traced back to the oldest drawings, maybe an ancient drawing of a deer on a cave wall or a warrior riding a horse in a battle. But we wouldn't quite consider that animation, would we? Our idea of animation is something that physically looks like it's moving, like it travels across a page or waves or something. So what made that happen? It wasn't a digital software, by the way. Just letting you know. An old machine, invented in the early 1600s, projected what could be considered to be the first example of animation. It was called the Magic Lantern, probably created by Christian HUYGENS, something. His name's hard to say. Images would be drawn on a glass slides and placed into the magic lantern. A light bulb behind the slide would shine, and you could see the images on the wall. Some of these slides contained moving parts, and could therefore be considered animation. There are plenty of other machines used for animation. The thaumatrope, the zoetrope, the still popular flipbook, but I'm not gonna get into those. I'm gonna get into some other stuff. The first ever cartoon with personality was called Gertie the Dinosaur. This cartoon featured the creator, Winsor McCay, calling a dinosaur out of her cave to come and interact with him. He asks her to perform various tasks, such as bow or raise her foot. Gertie has a hard time following these commands and often gets distracted. The cartoon took over 10,000 drawings to make, with McCay creating the keyframes and an assistant filling out the scenes in between. Even though this was technically an animation, it is not considered the first. Moving on to the next first. The first animated movie star was not Gertie the Dinosaur, nor the infamous Mickey Mouse. It was Felix the Cat, created in 1919. He made an appearance in Feline Follies. He was created by Otto Mesmer, and went on to be a lovable comic. Now the big one that most people have heard about, and considered widely to be the first and most iconic animation, Shrek. Just kidding. It's not Shrek. Walt Disney's Steamboat Willie, brought to life in 1928, is quite possibly the most iconic animation in the history of animation. You know that scene at the beginning of some Disney movies with Mickey Mouse whistling and spinning the wheel and dancing? Yeah, that was Steamboat Willie, if you didn't know. Steamboat Willie was the first cartoon to include sound with its animation. Disney, as we all know, went on to be one of the most successful animation businesses, second to only Pixar, and now there's Disney Pixar. So... In 1930, cartoon short series Merry Melodies was created by Warner Brothers, including iconic characters such as Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. And 7 years later, the first ever fully animated movie was released, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Then, in the 1960s, cartoons began to show up on TV. In 1960, The Flintstones was released, followed by Yogi Bear the year after. But what happened in the 1980s completely changed animation. CGI, or computer-generated imagery, was invented. CGI revolutionized animation, replacing traditional 2D animation with new 3D animation. In 1984, The Adventures of Andre and Wally B was released, the first short film to use only CGI, and then 11 years later, the first fully CGI movie came out, Toy Story. Toy Story was a big hit, mainly because everyone wanted to see how the first ever 3D animated movie had turned out. And it turned out extremely well, so well that it inspired so many more animated films. In fact, more and more CGI movies came out. The last traditionally animated film made by Disney was The Princess and the Frog, released in 2009. That's not to say that there won't be another traditional Disney movie, but from the looks of it, they've moved on. After all, traditional animation is hard. Animation has improved so much since Snow White and Toy Story, and looking back, some of the animations made in the 1900s might not seem very good. But we have to keep in mind that these animations formed what we see today, and if it makes you feel better, there will probably be a Disney live-action remake. Yay. I don't think that we appreciate how long and hard all the people creating the first animated movies worked. Not only were they influencing modern entertainment, but they also inspired so many artists who were told that there is no use for an art degree in the real world. And look at the movies we have now. We have Frozen, Coco, Into the Spider-Verse. People like Walt Disney and Steve Jobs revolutionized the animation industry, and animators all around the world work hard to improve it every day.